chance to read the minutes from the 10th? Nick,
Yes, I'm good with them.
any discussion? How about you, Katie?
I've read them, I'm satisfied with them.
So we'll bring it to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
So 3. We have additions and deletions. We have new business, processing road issues and calls, new business, V-Trans, Better Roads Grant, new business, West River Snow Goers Letter to Approve, new business, Rescue Inc. contract, new business, WB Mason service contracts, new business, correspondence from Greenwood, all of those to be members of the public. We have Andy. Do you want to say something now, Andy, or you want to wait until later?
I was here with regards to the ongoing budget discussion.
Okay, so when we get there, we'll do that. The correspondence is from the Greenwoods. Where is that now? Is it in the packet? or-
Should be, yeah.
Do you have it right? Is it like?
Oh,
in
I'm
the back?
sorry, no, it's that.
Okay.
You want it, grab.
Okay, so the Greenwoods, right before the meeting at 4:44 today, sent an email with an attachment of a road map. And it has 2 portions which I will read. East Hill Road, steep way behind Harmonyville store. The town is plowing this road all the way through now, ? The road has not been maintained through winter in all the years I can remember and would like an explanation on why it is now. Our taxes continue to grow every year and added expenses like this, additional plowing and sanding, do not make sense or justify. This portion of road has always been given approval to be used as a snowmobile trail which would eliminate that. Number 2, Simpson Brook Road, the short section from the intersection of Jordan Hill to the dead end at May Ellerman's property. This section of road was not maintained through the winter last year and so far not this year. This is a class 3 road highway, so my question is why is it not being maintained? This seems like a liability if access is not maintained to a house at the end, Element's house as well. An explanation would be appreciated. I have spoken to Jeremy. Jeremy, you want me to summarize what we spoke about and then you can add to it?
Sure.
They did not used to plow down from East Hill, however, plowing up to the houses that we have to plow to is very hard on the trucks and it's very hard to turn around. And when the road crew is at the top at Hope Farm, it's much easier to just plow down the hill. It's less stress on the vehicles. It just makes more sense. Should we have more communication with the snowmobile club? Maybe. To the second one, Jeremy had gotten communication from May Ellerman directly, asking him not to plow that road because she felt someone was like squatting in her house.
Oh, geez.
And she wanted it to be really off limits, sort of like barricaded by snow. And Jeremy and I spoke about the fact that if that's her wishes, maybe we should get it in writing in case there was a fire and the firemen couldn't get there or something, then that was her wishes. Would you like to add to what I
I
said?
just want to clarify that I personally have not spoken to May. This was something that she contacted Steve about.
Right.
And we just kept the ball rolling. I know that she has, in the 6 years I've been working here, she's never plowed her driveway, which is another couple 100 yards long, so it's not like it's gonna help the fire department to get to her house if that portion of the road is not plowed, so.
So I don't know what the board feels about my two suggestions of how should Jeremy communicate with the snowmobile club. I mean, they asked us for permission to use the trails and everything, we want a good relationship with them, but we have to take what's best for the highway crew and the vehicles and into consideration as well. So we can communicate with them and.
Can I add to, East Hill thing doesn't, it is easier for us to maintain just because we don't have to turn around at holes. Over the years, we've made a mess of the whole property with our trucks, and we already plowed the hardest section of the road as it is, from the bottom side East Hill, the Harmony Hill side. So we just figured it'd be easier to come down the hill.
And I think as far as saving money, I think you're saving money by not wear and tearing the vehicles
Correct.
as much.
I mean, if we want to talk about saving money, how about getting rid of some of these one-house roads that we maintain for thousands of dollars every year for one piece of property?
What we've done in the past is make a list of roads and see how easy it is through deeds to throw up said road. Was it always a road? And we can talk about that.
Yep.
But are you willing to contact the snowmobile club, how we can communicate?
Yeah, I believe it's the letter that they have for us tonight is
Jesse Bickford, right?
Jesse
Bishop.
Bishop.
Okay,
Get a hold of her.
okay, and.
I mean, the reason that I believe East Hill was open like that was because they had a bridge at one point that went across the brook to Harmonyville store, and that washed away with the 21 storm, and they never replaced it, so.
Okay,
It's not like we're getting a whole bunch of
So-
snow anymore either, so.
Jeremy, you'll communicate with the snowmobile club through Jesse
I
and.
would, if there is a decision to be made not to maintain that part of the hill, I highly suggest we put barricades at each end, because people just don't follow, if they see the road that's not maintained, they still go out it, and I know people are getting stuck on that section of road all the time.
And then snowplows can't get to them.
Also, the residents on that hill have been asking us to maintain that side for years now, so. I don't know, I'll do whatever the board wants me to do, just.
Well, why don't you talk to Jesse and then
Okay.
report back next meeting? And then, Connie and I will make a letter to, Element and present that at the next meeting for the board's approval.
Just another point, that the East Hill is a class 3 road as well as the one up on Sixth
Right, there's
Road,
no
so
differentiation.
there's no differentiating, so it's kind of,
No, it's just one asked you not to plow and the other,
Right.
it's,
so.
right. Okay, so we've taken care of correspondence. Would you like to read the warrants?
Me?
Yes, please. You're the only you here.
Alright, I'd like to make a motion to pay the warrants. Number 1, payroll in the amount of $15,397.34. Number 2, payroll taxes in the amount of $7,034.57. Number 3, general fund in the amount of $8,940.39. Number 4, highway, there's no amount there, Connie.
There was no one.
Okay. Number 5, highway equipment in the amount of $2,291.54 for a total of $33,663.84.
And we need a second.
Seconded.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor of accepting the warrant say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, then we'll wing past the money pieces. And we are back on highway. Do you have anything else, Jeremy?
No.
Okay, we're gonna talk about highway later on with budgets, so I'm
Yeah, I just,
sure you'll.
we have that correspondence from the West Hill people, so I don't know if you want to talk about that now or.
That's under the,
That's that's under new business?
Okay.
Okay.
No, I'm good.
Okay, and I think her report is in the, could you look in the beginning of the warrants thing? I think the lady stuck her treasurer report there, thank you. Treasurer's report, the checking account has $758,881.34, and the sweep account has the normal $30,000. So town clerk, Olenka brought in $724.50 the 1st through the 15th of December. And the chair, let me see what I should talk about here. What did we say I was gonna mention here? I said I'd write it down when I got here. Well, I'll tell you later if I remember. Old business, Grace Cottage Hospital, Act 250 municipal impact. I presented that questionnaire that I was leery about signing without board input. Connie and I met with Andrea. Andrea filled this out and I agree with it except for the last piece of the to be completed by town manager section where it says solid waste and Andrea put yes. And I think it should be municipality does not provide this service. Connie emailed and got a response from the fire department. They very diligently asked for the plans to be forwarded to them, which Andrea did, and they signed off on that. So we checked that. Police, we do not have police. Rescue is provided. Road maintenance, we do the whole town public roads. And the last one, as I said, I don't agree with what Andrea wrote, and I will sign this if the board agrees that we can change it. X out the yes and put municipal does not provide this service. Well, I'm not gonna do it on the draft.
Yeah.
Did you have something?
Yeah, is the transfer station not our solid waste disposal, or is that?
Yeah, except we don't do businesses and they have their own garbage.
The question,
So-
Nick says, does the municipality have the capacity to provide the following services without unreasonable burden to the above project? So the idea is that we don't provide solid waste disposal to the project.
Or the house.
So, well, what I see is that it says without unreasonable burdens for the above project. So I guess the way I interpret it is, will this project place unreasonable burdens on the town's capacity to do solid waste disposal? And so I would think this project would not affect our transfer station. So that's the way I'm reading it, but it is hard to make sense of it if we're kind of getting two different interpretations and we don't exactly know what is meant. But that is the way I was thinking about it.
Again, I don't know. I'm always leery of putting our necks out with something with the state and committing ourselves to something we don't want to be committed to.
The way that we discussed it with Andrea Seaton from Grace Cottage Hospital, when we were instructed to reach out to the fire department and Rescue Inc., the question was, will this project create an unreasonable burden?
So you're saying it's the way Nick is interpreting it.
That's the way she was, when she phrased the question that was going to be asked to the fire department and to Rescue Inc. It was, will this create an unreasonable burden?
Is there like a contact with the state, a number that we could call just to kind of get the answer straight from the source? Because I would like to move forward. I don't want to hold up their project with all of these little permitting actions.
Mm-hmm. I don't know, Andy may have an answer. I don't know of a state contact. Andrea was talking about the architectural firm. Andy?
Do you have a copy that I submitted?
I think it's the same one. It's now been looked
Well,
over several times.
the one I have here in the packet is not filled out. The one I gave you was already filled out.
Right.
And,
Then she met and
pardon me?
we met with Andrea and this is what came out of that.
Okay, but I'm saying, before that, I had submitted one to you that was filled out. And I put language in there that said something to the effect of, on solid waste, that we provide solid waste pickup, but not for commercial accounts. And then the other thing they asked in here is, if the town doesn't provide it, who does? And I think there was some language there, there are numerous other contractors and haulers that are available. There's multiple parts to it. One is, does the town provide this municipal service? And will it be an adverse impact because of that? The next section is, why don't you provide it? Or expanding more on that. And if you don't, who does?
So you're saying like with police protection, we don't provide it at all? And so we should say why we don't provide it?
When she filled out this draft, she wrote that municipality does not provide it. And then it says,
We have a limited Vermont State Police. Do you have a copy of what you sent us?
he emailed it to us, we can print it out.
Okay,
I mailed it to the county with the cover letter.
okay.
I assume that got through, but, okay.
Okay, so where should we stand here now, board?
I think we should table it.
All right, and table it until I get information, because our next meeting isn't until December 14th. January.
I mean, there's a lot of questions being asked that seem like they need clarification, and with Nick bringing up an alternate, like, way to even think about the questions, I feel like we can't move forward until we really clarify that, because I'm like you, I don't wanna be on the hook,
Yeah,
and I don't, sometimes these things come back to bite you.
what do you feel, Nick?
I think that's the right move. I sure would love to maybe get an answer tomorrow and just sign it, but that's probably not reasonable, so I think we can table it till the next meeting.
And if we say the next meeting, if we happen to have a fully warned budget meeting, maybe we could be polite to them and, hitch it onto that meeting so that they get it sooner. I know they're waiting,
Yeah.
a lot of places they're gonna fundraise with, wants to see certain things before they fundraise. And, that's one of them, this Act 250 permit. So, okay, budget discussion in depth.
So there's a document that went out yesterday, which is pretty much the same document that was included in the packet for the December 10th meeting, but there has been a couple of adjustments. We met with emergency management and made an adjustment. In the document that I sent out yesterday, there's a cover sheet that talks about questions that should be answered before the 14th, when we vote on it up and down.
So I don't know how the board wants to do this. Do we want to just read this first cover page, make notes, make comments? I mean, I'm only one person with ideas. I'd like to hear your ideas.
I know at least so on this document Connie gave us, we're starting and she starts with articles. I'm feeling like, I think we talked about it a couple times in budget meetings, like, could we ask the VLCT advice on the wording? Should we ask our lawyer advice on the wording? I really think that since we have, not been specific enough in certain areas when writing articles, we should try to seek out as much advice as possible, because I'm reading through it and I know how I would edit it, but then.
And I agree with you 100%, but I think we have to know what said articles would be before we ask for advice.
Oh, yep, I agree.
So, if trash is something that we're gonna put out there, do we budget it in the line items and then ask for it in an article? The fire department article, they worded it, but we could find out if this is proper to what they do. So why don't you guys quietly read through this and see if there's anything you'd like to add to it before we look for advice?
Can I just say, on the issue of the trash, we have to decide if we're going to make an article, and if we're going to make an article on one of those options,
And then,
Because I don't know if you can give multiple options in an article, so.
I think the trash is tricky because I almost feel that we should budget as usual because we pretty much, I mean, I haven't been at the trash meetings, but if we're gonna continue to have like informational meetings about the differences and put it up to the town, I don't know how we would budget any differently.
what I said just a minute ago was that if we were gonna do a trash article, I think we'd still line item budget it, it would have its own bucket. And then if, the town voted to do away with it or to go to the other plan of, then those numbers would be augmented.
Right, what I was saying is that the select board should decide if they are going to make an article on trash. And which option would it be that they would make an article on, if they're going to make an article? Because I don't think you can do options in an article.
You
right?
could have two separate articles.
Oh,
You could have an article and the first one could pass and negate the second article or vice versa.
Okay,
Or you could have no article because the board wants to not take the recommendation of the committee and do what they want to do, but then if the townspeople want to have an article for it, then the townspeople could get X amount of signatures and ask for an article.
And is that larger discussion happening at town meeting? About the final decision about trash, or do you think that maybe would happen ahead of time?
I don't know.
That's where I'm like unclear.
We talked about having a trash meeting.
Yeah.
And a pre-town meeting.
Yeah,
And all of that stuff, and we've had pre-town meetings always, you know, for the last 40 years probably, but would there be a big piece of trash? It depends on what the select board decides. If the select board says, no way, and the townspeople don't say, you know, we really want this, then it might be a dead deal, I don't know. But we did have a very robust committee, and people who came into the committee saying we need to keep our transfer station left saying maybe it's a white elephant, I'm putting words in their mouth, but you know, maybe it's very antiquated and the compactor is so costly to keep running for the little bit of work it does for us, so let's look at other options. And trash is an expensive business. I mean, you look at the figures that we have, you know, it's crazy. So if you guys can just look at the articles quickly and we'll check them off, that I'll also add that Connie and I are meeting in Newfane on Monday at 10 o'clock with the clerk of this board down there to talk Sheriff's Department about a possible collaboration. Londonderry and Jamaica have been making noise about talking, and they haven't put their money where their mouth is, but now all of a sudden they may join us on Zoom on Monday. So I'll report back what happens. And 60,000 was just a random guess. It might be 50, you know.
mm-hmm.
So at the top here, I put seek advice, Vermont Leagues of Cities and Towns or lawyer for wording, basically.
Yeah.
under the highway one, there is a decision that needs to be made by the select board. I guess we could make it on January 14th, but there's the issue of at town meeting 2025 for fiscal year 26, the budget committee, the general fund budget committee, has said that they want to put the 2 leases in a special article. However, after that, they would get moved into the budget line items and moved out of the capital fund. Don't know how the wording would go on that. Don't even know if the select board is in agreement on that, but that's what the committee has.
And is that different than this article? Or is that included in there somewhere?
I don't think it's included in this language, that's why I made a little note.
So you're saying it's like 91,000 and 35,000 or?
It's about 124,000.
Yeah, 91 and 36 or something.
And I think that was how we came up with that $300,000 number, right? To
For
still
fiscal year
grow,
26.
to still grow that and also to pay for the current leasing.
I do think that if we're going to a lawyer or VLCT, I need to know the direction of the board. Do you want that to be in fiscal year 27? Do you want it to be line items? And how would we incorporate that into the article?
I definitely do. I think that I thought that it was important for us to discuss it at this town meeting to give the townspeople a chance to kind of talk about it because it happened in between town meeting, but going forward, I would like to see it added added as a line item.
So, just so I understand, it would be like 135,000 plus 300 plus 200?
No, the 135 or so, or
Is it-
124 comes out of that 300.
Okay.
So.
In fiscal year 26.
Because another conversation that we'd had with, was it Nemrick, she was saying that you don't wanna create these reserves and drain them and create them and drain them. You wanna create them so that you're building upon them. And so we wanted to have the opportunity to fund these leases if the town agrees with us, but also build this reserve, and this was our way of doing both of those things.
Okay, the only part I had a question about was the repair of major equipment. I mean, I can figure out what a major piece of equipment is, but how does it differentiate from when Elaine puts it in one category and another category? Like when truck 3 needs the big body replacement and sander replacement, and who decides, is that major or is that normal? I don't know. That's a little ambiguous to me. So,
Maybe we would have to do as Nimrick was saying and add a value to it, like, you know, repairs over $30,000 or something, or we talked to Jeremy about what we would consider a major equipment repair and say, well, you know, for repairs over this amount of
so
money.
sort of catastrophic
Yeah,
repairs.
yeah,
Not just your brake job or your,
yeah,
okay. I think that language might be better.
I agree, and I was gonna say that, in the second part, after $300,000 would be allocated for the purchasing, leasing, and repair of major equipment, somehow with that leasing part of it, we could say future and current leasing or something like that, so that we would have the opportunity to lease other equipment with it if we needed to, or satisfy our current leases with that. Might be a way to streamline that.
And then the 200 would be for the infrastructure,
Yeah, the bridges and streetlights.
which we budget for anyway, but we'd just be doing it in an article. So, do you want to work on the language on that, Katie?
Yeah,
And,
I do think we still need to get direction from the board about, do we want to move the leases into line items in fiscal year 27, like subsequent? I don't know if that,
why do we need to say that now? We're not asking that in the article. Because next
well, I thought
year,
we were asking it. The highway budget committee was talking about moving it into a line item post fiscal year 26.
Yeah, we didn't know when, in town meeting that we could kind of bring that up. We didn't want it to be assumed that every year we were going to be
It's gonna be an article.
putting it in, because that kind of destabilizes the entire lease, and at that point, we're almost halfway through it. We don't wanna have the possibility of voting it down.
but if you kept this same article without the leases in it, you'd still be spending the same amount of money, because you'd have the leases in a line item and you'd have the.
It's true,
You
it's
know.
true. This is just a way for us to talk about it.
Yeah, I think Nemrick had said that they would need to be moved out of a reserve because they're now an active budget item.
So I'm not quite sure why we even put them in the reserve to start with. Why don't we just line item them now? be trying to make it more apparent to the voter.
I think Nimrick agreed that we should because
They didn't get a chance to discuss it because it happened after town meeting, I think is what she said.
we've definitely wrestled with this question a lot.
Yeah.
I flip-flopped because part of me just says, well, we took out leases, we are responsible for them, we need to put them in line items. But at the same time, we took out leases. A lot of the members of the public had
But
some
we were buying stuff. and-
engagement in that and wanted to talk about it more. So it's,
Yeah, and what about just not saying the 27 and then we just cross that bridge next time, because we might find that we want it to stay a certain way. I don't know.
I do agree that we don't want to back ourselves into too many corners by being too specific. I think there's like such a balance of wiggle room with these things. I don't know. I think it's an important piece, but I do see
It
what you're
is an
saying.
important piece, but I just, as you said, I don't want to commit
Yeah.
too much.
Yeah.
If you want to write something up, then we will propose it to the VLCT and get a legal opinion. And if we're not satisfied with that, we can call our lawyer. And Nick, any further discussion before we go on to law enforcement?
No, I mean, I think it's a complicated question. I think I'm kind of leaning in the way that Katie has also been framing it, where, yes, I think streamlined budgeting, it would be nice to just throw it into the line items, but for really transparency's sake, for the residents who have kind of raised lots of questions, I think it does merit maybe discussing it in the reserve account for this year and moving to the line item next year.
In an article.
Yes, that's what I meant in an article.
Okay, then I'll move on to law enforcement. I'm willing to give this section a little more meat after I talk with Newfane on Monday and present it next time. And if we get a little more meat to it, Connie and I can even ask VLCT for an opinion. And trash, I don't know what to say. I know we worked real hard. We came to a consensus to get rid of the trash. It seemed like half of the board did not agree. So I'm kind of feeling I don't know what to do about that.
I think for me on the trash piece, we did our due diligence as the committee to really listen to our experts, right? Our road foremen, our previous road foremen, the folks who have really been most working with the transfer station. And it was very clear to us in those meetings, what are kind of some of our best paths forwards. And now we have to kind of listen to what are the residents' concerns, what can we alleviate, what are maybe some things that we didn't think about in the committee. I think it's interesting the idea you put up, Allie, about doing 2 articles and seeing how that goes. I hadn't thought of that. And I don't know if maybe we asked the LCT if that's been done elsewhere. And like how those discussions go, maybe. So I would definitely be open to that approach and just kind of throwing into the budget the status quo and having the hook truck and the no trash as 2 different articles for discussion at town meeting.
So basically we would have 2 articles for the 2 proposals out of the trash committee meetings. And if they failed, we'd already have the money in the line item budgets to go with status quo.
That's what, yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. I don't know if it if it
I mean,
works.
again, I think it's so important that we have this pre-town meeting and we have, some dedicated time for folks to at least talk about it. Who knows how much discussion it'll drum up, but to give that opportunity before we get to town meeting, I think it's still really important.
But bear in mind that at pre-town meeting, we already have our town report printed.
Right.
So we've
So
already
we kind of-
committed to the articles and the budget,
Right.
so
Well-
we're only giving information and getting feedback. And
Exactly.
giving awareness, sort of.
And if we budget with the line items for the status quo, and then we have the 2 special articles, we have a path to go 1 of 3 ways.
Okay.
But
Do
we
you
have a
agree
way
with
to
that,
discuss
Katie?
it beforehand.
Yeah. I mean, I've been personally receiving a lot of feedback about people just finding out about the trash, and I know we put it on Front Porch Forum, and I know that we've been warning meetings and all of that. It's just like there's just been a lot of people asking me. That's why I get kind of hung up on.
And I've heard a lot of people,
Yeah.
I mean, I use it, but I've heard a lot of people that have their own dumpsters and have for, 100 years and double pay, and they never minded it, but it didn't hurt their feelings if it was gonna go away.
Yeah,
So
I think
that's,
there's a lot of different opinions out there.
Mhm.
That's so I was getting confused about how we would make an article before we've decided. So.
Mhm.
Um,
So Connie and I will work on law enforcement and the trash articles. And then we will get VLCT for all of the above and present to you next meeting. Connie, do you want to talk about the revenue page? Oh, wait, do I need to keep going on the back here?
No, this is, you're starting on to that was the articles, now we're moving on to the budget.
So, the revenue. You talked
Yeah,
to
there's-
Elaine.
So Elaine and I met about putting in revenue numbers, and as we were going through the revenue numbers, we came across the delinquent property tax line item under revenue. And historically, I don't know how long, but at least for the last 3 or 4 years, there has never been a budget number put in for revenue from the delinquent tax collector.
And I went back 25 years and checked and there wasn't then, so.
Right, so it appears that there's never revenue budgeted for, yet we get significant dollar amounts from delinquent tax collection every year. So I raised with her what I thought I heard Nemrick say, which is, you should put in revenue so that you can not artificially tax the residents, right? Because if there's money that comes in, it helps with the budget. There's 2 ways of looking at it, I gather, which is you never know what you're going to get for delinquent tax collection, and it can always be used as a surplus. That's one way of looking at it. So therefore you wouldn't budget for it. Or the other way is it is consistent revenue that comes in every year. It should be factored in to help with the budget.
And we
So-
do give an educated guess on the late interest and the delinquent tax interest of the delinquent taxes that we say we can't guess what they're gonna be, but we're guessing what the interest is gonna be. So it's kind of, we're doing it 2 different ways, really. We're saying we don't know how much is gonna come in, but the interest is gonna be about this. So, to me, that's a little bit of talking out of both sides of your mouth, and maybe we need to make a decision there. Do you wanna make a page like a decision, or should we make a decision now?
We have a choice that you can make a decision. I think the more decisions we can make so that we can finalize a draft for January 14th, that will have our ability to do comparisons, percentage increase, decreases. We can't do any of that until we have all the numbers in, and it'd be great to have all those numbers in before the January 14th final vote. So as a person who's doing up the draft budgets, I would find it helpful to have a decision of, are we going to budget for revenue from delinquent tax collection, or are we going to continue to not budget any revenue coming in?
So I'm thinking 2 things. We could ask VLCT their opinion, what other towns do. We could run something with both scenarios. I'm just thinking out loud.
I'm wondering if we could kind of still budget for delinquent taxes, but maybe on a low end, like we might see our last 3-year average was in the 200,000s over the 10 years. I think you took that like 2012 through 2024, Ally. Or Connie, I don't know if you did that.
The 23 we took out because it looked like a,
Because it was an outlier.
yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, if we budget 150,000, very conservative estimate, and then we might still have a surplus after that. I don't know. I mean, it does seem
I'd like
reasonable from Nemrick. Yeah. Because I feel like there's maybe some anxiety about budgeting for things that we don't know is coming, but we can feel reasonably certain that perhaps at least this amount should be coming because it has been consistently year after year.
And, you know, we try to be so frugal for the taxpayers that this would be a way of doing that.
Right, absolutely.
Do you have a thought?
Yeah, I mean, I'm leaning towards Nick that if we budget for it, we budget conservatively. I was looking at this option that included 2023 and then the one that didn't include 2023, and I'm more comfortable with that 162 number than I am of the $214,000 number. I think that 2023 definitely looks like an anomaly. And I would err on the side of budgeting conservatively, but I'd be open to putting it in the budget overall.
So Nick has suggested $150,000 as a very conservative number. Are people okay with that?
I'm good with that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and we'll keep the late fee and the interest the same. And the education bill is a given number. And what was the use of fund balance? We talked about that.
That's the surplus that you apply.
That's where
We don't know that until a little bit later.
Okay, and then we have the fee that we've received the same thing for the last 45 years from the US Dam, loss of payment 5656, and then the pilot program, almost 30,000. There's current,
I have a question about
Yep.
that dam amount. How come our actual in 24 was 11,000?
We got 2 payments.
We got 2 payments, and I have asked Elaine to research this repeatedly because I can't find anything. And I've gotten the 2 check stubs, and they have slightly different language. I've called, I haven't gotten a response. I put it back in her lap. I said, you know, if we don't get the 56, it's gonna hurt because they say, and they weren't like skirting the dates. So you wouldn't think, well, we got one a little late and one a little earlier, or something like that. So we can still put it back in her. We got exactly double.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to let you know, when I sat with Elaine on this, I really pushed her, the treasurer, to tell us a number. And then if I had a question, I'd ask why she came up with that number. But I do believe that as a treasurer, she's the one that's most able to tell us what the revenue sources are. So we can go back and challenge any of them, but these are the ones that the treasurer stands by.
But if we don't get the 56, then she's not gonna take it out of her pocket and hand it to us. So I think we could say that the board wanted more clarification on the obvious double payment from the prior year. And maybe it'll have more clout if the whole board asks for it.
Yeah, I agree, because that is really strange and it's exactly double.
It's exactly double and it's exactly for the same thing, so.
So is the board directing Elaine to come up with an explanation?
Yes, do we need a motion for that or just a directive?
It's always better to do a motion, but I'm not sure it's required, but I think it's probably better.
I'd like to make a motion to direct Elaine, our treasurer, to provide some clarification on the double payment of, some detailed clarification on the double payment that we received under US Dam tax loss payment.
And a second?
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Let's vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, then I can read them down if you'd like, and stop me if you pay the pilot 28,922, Vermont State current use 78,886, civil and local fines 300, Then down in licenses, 15,000. The town hall common rentals, $100. Reimbursement, 0, 2,000 for Saber Net. Oh, by the way, on July, the other J, January 14th, I think it is, I have a meeting here with the solar company. So if anybody wants to be there. Listers grant income 0, tax sales 0, and $185 for liquor licenses. Then we go on to the town office fees, $10,000, and $4,000. Then the recording fees are $10,000. Marriage licenses $750, dog licenses $14.75, fish and game $150. Vehicle registrations $100, blanks down to, what does that say? Something reserve, Connie? Oh, fire reserve, right? There used to be money there, but it went into a reserve. Transfer income 0, and trash bag sales, we always budget around 30,000, and we got 32 last time. Any questions on that page? Okay, so this is the select board is the next one. We have the select board chair gets 1,500,
Are you just gonna read the whole, every single department, or do you wanna focus on the questions? Which would you rather do?
I don't know. It's what the board wants to do. You saw how long it took to do the last one.
Nick, did you have something you wanted to say?
I am okay if we stick to the outstanding questions. That's my opinion, but if you choose to read through them all, that is fine as well.
Okay, so we have 2 blanks on this page that Elaine is still getting information on. We have 1 new item, which I brought up to Connie about retirement, and retirement is 7.25, and the employee pays part, and the town pays the equal and matching amount, and that would be for Connie. Her wage is not a great wage for all the work she does, and it was my opinion as one person that would be a way of thanking her for the work she does. But it's up to the board and the townspeople, of course. So,
That's this 1,167.
where it says new next to it.
Yeah.
I think there's 2 ways to go about this, which is the select board can have a conversation without me present at some meeting, or the other way is to have the conversation publicly and decide yes or no on it.
I mean, I'm comfortable having the conversation publicly. I mean, it's really a benefit for the position, not just you, because there'll be somebody that comes after you that would, this would be in the budget for as well. So I'm in full agreement with it.
What about you, Nick?
Yes, I agree as well.
So,
Nothing else to add on that.
I don't know we're not making motions for these things, we're
Right.
just kind of putting checks. And the only other one, we have the grant wage and the wages, and just to preface all of our budget work, we did 2.25, which was the Social Security increase, and we did that to every wage position, the grant writer and the board assistant. So anything else on this page if you want to look down? And
I don't have any more questions.
I mean, the Sovereign Solar drives me crazy. We get $2,000 and they charge us $7,000
Yeah.
So, but maybe I'll figure that out one day.
I'll try to attend that meeting. It sounds like it's on my daughter's birthday, but if it's not, I'll attend. I'm curious as well.
Yeah. She said, oh, we'll Zoom it. I said, no, I want to see the whites of your eyes. You need to come up. Okay, we're going on to town government and land management. I don't think there's anything unusual here at all. We did decrease Half Meadow to $500 because we just had never spent anything, and the only thing we have up and coming is low mowing the edges until we get the edges kind of firmed, and we can always go from there. And we budgeted $3,000 for the fountain care, but I don't know why we budgeted nothing for common supplies, but there's gonna be some new buckets, categories, right? So, town elections, that's pretty straightforward. We budgeted 500 instead of the 750 from the prior time because they changed to the, you may have seen that big machine that tallies all the votes, so it takes a lot less time. And then we are on, that's elections again. Then town clerks, we did the 2.25, the clerical, the same thing with the wage. One thing we have to decide, and it might not be on this page, but just to think about, are we gonna keep paying the full health benefits and the, was it triple C, the child care something? That we kind of got surprised with partway last year. So those are things when we're thinking about salaries that we have to have in the back of our mind.
We weren't budgeting for eyes or vision and dental before, and now we are.
They didn't want it
For
before,
Alenka.
and now they do.
Oh,
It's a benefit we give, but they chose not to take it last time.
that makes sense.
The
So,
only thing that, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record and I apologize, the question of whether or not we're paying 100% of the health benefits and the tax, the sooner the select board can make that decision, then we can do final numbers. But going into the January 14th, we need to know so that we can go in with a final draft.
and how are we gonna decide if we're not meeting until then? Do we have to decide now, the three of us?
Do we have a policy that states that that's what we do, or we've just been doing it that way?
Just been doing it that way, as far as I can tell.
So it would,
And I heard several different things, but I haven't seen it. I heard that we paid up to 16,000, and I haven't seen that, but it had gone over that, and we were still paying 100%.
I
So,
think when we were trying to decide it last year and the year before, we were crunching numbers and trying to make that ceiling go up to where we were, like, meeting the 100% as close to it as we possibly could, from what I remember.
and some places say 100% for the employee and 50% for another, and you know, I don't know, like, just say we said no health insurance or 50%, how would we tell somebody that's elected, you know, and well, I guess they're only on 1 year, so that probably wouldn't hurt, but you know, they're valuable workers and you wanna, you know, honor their work, so I don't know.
And there's not a lot of them, so when it affects people, it affects like a large percentage of a small group, you know what I mean? I feel that we did stabilize our cost very well this year, and to be honest, for us to carry forward what we were already doing last year, I'd be comfortable with, because we stabilized the cost. And then if we wanted to make a decision on these percentages going forward after that.
It might be a good idea to look at a policy for the next budget
Yeah,
round.
yeah, where it's really something that's in
Yeah.
writing that we've had more time to hash out the numbers
And you can
for.
even talk to the employees about, or the people it affects. The other thing we could do is charge the triple C and give full health benefits. So there's several things, but should we make a decision now, Nick? What do you think in that Connie wants a decision by the time her meeting comes around on the 14th?
Yeah, as it relates to the health insurance question, I mean, I have been pretty firm, I think, in supporting that we continue the 100%. I think that was just a really great benefit and incentive to get people to help out and work for their town and serve their resident and serve their neighbors. So I'm in full support of maintaining that.
Okay, so should we make a motion on that since it's an important one, or just keep it as? Because I don't see it as a budget item, but it's.
Well, it is a budget item in the sense that currently these numbers reflect 100% employer paid. So you could,
Well, these numbers are just their salary.
no, when you go down
Oh, when you go down to
yeah.
there.
So you could take a motion to do budget numbers based on, to accept these budget numbers based on 100% employer paid.
Okay.
I think it is helpful to have a clarification on that, even if, like you say, you revisit the policy and.
But it would be after this budget cycle.
Right.
So I'll make a motion that we accept the budget figures as written, with the town paying 100% for fiscal of health benefits and triple C for fiscal year 26.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, then the only other one we have the cloud and the licenses, we're still waiting on Elaine. I guess we'll go to the next page. This is the finance office.
So there's a big question there,
A big question.
which is the $5,000 for the tax.
Right, that's Nick and Elaine and Anita and Connie and I had a meeting the other day. Elaine had a lot of ideas of where the $5,000 initially came from, but actually Anita and I had clarified that it was when we didn't have a treasurer and we had a bookkeeper, and Joe Dano was the treasurer in name and collected the taxes, and he got paid $5,000 a year. And then when we got a treasurer again, they plugged the wage in, but they never deleted that line. It wasn't misspent, but I don't think it, in my opinion, should keep being budgeted. Elaine made, showed some records where she had taken portions of that $5,000 and paid herself for some things that she construed as tax collecting, and it equaled about between $500 and $900 a year for the last 3 years. So it was my thought that if we added the 832 onto the 34 and change, we'd bring it up to 35. And they requested $5,000 and $2,500 on the second 2 line items. And if we made that 4,000 or 5,000, I think we'd be fine. But that's just my reckoning.
So just so what we're clear, and in case Nick hasn't heard, what Ally's recommending for the finance department is to not budget for the line item that says wages tax collector, and to take a portion of that historical 5,000 and bring Elaine's salary up to 35,000 instead of 34,168 for fiscal year 26.
35 even?
35 even, because that would be roughly the same amount of her lump sum that she takes out of the 5,000 and normally adds to her her wages. so that that lump sum would go into her salary and no longer under a tax collector line item. And that we would make sure that the finance office assistant who does do the tax collection, make sure that this line item covers her hours. She works about 185 hours collecting taxes, and we make sure that it's either 4,000 or 5,000 to cover that cost.
On one of these, it has 4,000 we wrote in, and then on the one with the blue on it, it only has 1,500.
I think the one with the blue, if I
Was the
remember,
original one.
was the original that they were asking, and that we were,
So 35,000 total for the
that,
treasurer.
then
Budget.
0 on the tax collector, and we'd have to make sure that we appoint the treasurer, the way I understand it, to be the tax collector. That's how most towns do it, that it's a joint job. And then the financial assistant would do a lot of the tax collection, but under the treasurer, and the treasurer is the one that's bonded and insured, so it makes sense in that way. And she would also do her current job of balancing the checkbooks, which the auditors say is mandatory, that it's not the treasurer balancing her own books.
So if we only go up to 4,000 for the office assistant,
That may not be quite enough.
that's not quite enough, I would
I'm
say.
happy with 5
5,
myself.
yeah, because we're still,
Yeah, we're still doing okay. So, do we need a motion for that since it's been sensitive, or we just?
Probably, I would think. You want to go on record, I don't know.
All right, I'd like a motion to set the treasurer / tax collector's wage at $35,000 a year, and the financial office assistant to the treasurer to be 5,000. Any further discussion?
should I second? Did
Oh,
you make
yeah.
the motion or were you
I
looking
did.
for a motion?
I did.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
So I don't want to split hairs over what amounts to, $700. But I guess my concern on the equity front is that we're giving out of the 5,000 that was already budgeted for in years past, we're dividing it by giving essentially 800 more to Elaine and just putting that into her salary, and it'll be in the salary moving forward. And then we're adding 800 to the 5,000. Like now it's a 5,800, right? So we're not taking the 5,000 and subtracting 800 and making 4,200 for the assistant. We're taking 800, adding it to the treasurer's salary, and then we're adding the full 5,000. So,
But we're not, but
splitting hairs over.
but
Go ahead.
they wanted 5,000 and 2,500. So they wanted 7,000 after Elaine's salary. I guess I'm not.
I didn't understand that.
And I'm not understanding what you're saying. So to us, in my mind, what they wanted was 35, 40, 42, 500 with that, and we're spending 40, but also we're streamlining it and we're making it more apparent where it is. When the treasurer said, well, I just take the money out of that bucket when I think it's appropriate. And I said, well, I think that that's inappropriate. So it's not a big, huge savings, but it's clarifying roles.
Yeah. So it's just, as I'm looking at at least the budget for FY25, we had 33,000 some change on treasurer's salary, 2,500 on the office assistant, and then there was a 5,000 that was for tax collection. That got split mostly to Anita, a little under 1,000 to Elaine over the past few years, right?
Right.
And so now moving forward, it seemed like we were trying to divvy up that 5,000, so we put it where it belongs instead of in this kind of undefined line item where we're not entirely sure how much goes to the person who's doing lots of tax collecting, how much is going to the treasurer. And how is that getting split up? But in the revisions that we have now, I guess I'm not sure. Are we reducing that 5,000 and we're increasing the office, finance office assistant by 1,500?
in my opinion, we are eliminating the line item tax collector and it's becoming part of the treasurer. And then we're maintaining the finance office assistant. And we thought 4,000 wasn't quite enough, we made it 5,000, we could make it 4,500.
What I recollect is at our meeting, they talked about about 185 hours a year on tax collection, which comes to about 3326. And I'd have to go look at my notes, but I remember them saying about 33 hours of reconciliation, which is $1,000 would cover that.
So it's a little over 4,000.
Yeah.
And 4,500 would cover it, but
I have a concern, and this concern is coming from, I just kind of started thinking about it and doing a bunch of math over here. If we are dividing up that money, as Nick was saying, and putting, and raising Elaine up to 35,000, then she's getting significantly more of a raise than everybody else. Based on what she was paid in fiscal year 25 at 33,335.
well, I don't agree with that if you consider that part of her money was in the second line item. It wasn't,
Yes, but it's still muddy to me.
okay,
I just kind of started to think about when we had raises all over the map. this
I'd be
last
fine
time,
with
and
keeping her at the 34 if that's what the board decides.
I honestly I don't want her salary to reflect any more than the same wage, the same raise everybody else is getting.
What do you do with the roughly $800 that she puts into her wages for tax collection?
Well, I think that maybe we go back to what we had talked about at the committee, where it either becomes a hired position, an appointed position, or an elected position as the tax collector, because like I had said, maybe we could expand Anita's position to involve that, which we kind of are doing here, which is fine to me. But I don't think that Elaine's salary should go up like 5%. I think that's gonna cause like confusion. And it just seems strange. It's not that it would be doing that going forward, but we have had to like.
So
deal
we
with
have
that
a
before.
motion on the floor. If we want to change it, I guess we have to vote to not pass the motion and make a new motion.
Did someone second the motion?
Katie
I
seconded
did.
it, and then she had second thoughts on
I mean,
it.
does it make sense what I'm saying? I think we either need, I think our question is not really how we divide this money up and where it's gonna go. It's
It's
that
the
somebody
equitable.
needs to be doing this job, and it really should just be one person, I think.
So Elaine you're agreeing that Elaine's the treasurer / tax collector, Anita's or whomever is the assistant. Then we have to decide what to pay those two line items.
I mean, well, so Elaine's position being elected, right, as treasurer, she was elected as this certain thing. For us to expand that position, I'm not sure that we can add to that without that going to town meeting. Now, we
Well,
hired.
I'm not sure we're expanding it, and
Okay.
I'll debate that with you, because our town website says that the treasurer is the tax collector.
Okay.
Everything I've read says the treasurer is the tax collector, except for our treasurer saying she's not the tax collector, Anita is.
Okay.
And it's this selectman's opinion that we have the treasurer bonded and insured, and it's important to have that person be the responsible person. So I don't think we're adding anything else to her that we're clarifying, in my opinion. And again, I'm only one person on the board, so.
I would like to see her, if she's gonna be if it's part of her position, I would just like to see her do the whole thing.
Well, and we will tell her to do the whole thing. You mean without Anita helping?
Yeah, I mean, if she's the tax collector and we're gonna figure out how to pay her to be the tax collector on top of the treasurer, then she needs to do the whole position. We can't keep dividing up the money, it's weird.
Well, you're saying give her more money? We
I don't know how to
My
do that.
understanding is that she has the right to assign work, right, she has an
Assistant.
assistant, so she has the right to assign work, which could be reconciling the books.
sitting,
tax
taking taxes. I don't think she has the right to call her assistant the tax collector.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So I think that's incorrect. I personally am fine with the 34,168 and the 5,000. And I don't like the idea of somebody dipping in and saying, well, I need part of that money because I do this.
I
That's
don't either.
just not kosher. I'm not saying it's larcenous, but it's just not the way things should be. Okay,
There's a
so
motion.
there's a motion on the floor. Shall we vote to knock that down and make a new motion? Board?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay,
I'm ready
so,
for a vote.
okay, all those in favor of 35 for the treasurer and 5 for the financial office assistant, say aye. All those against?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So the motion fails. So I'll entertain a new motion.
Just look at it now.
I'm not sure I understand what we're saying, so I'm afraid
I'm
to.
not sure either. I'm not sure how to. I'm not sure how to pay for the tax collector.
Well, if it was like 4,200, if we did 4,500, and then, well, the tax collecting item, the tax collecting, in my eyes, the tax collector line item would go away. And then you'd have the top two would be the treasurer's salary, treasurer / tax collector, and the financial office assistant. And we have them currently at 34,168 and 4,000, and we've entertained and discussed other amounts, and so we're waiting for a motion with some input from you too.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to have the treasurer's salary at $34,168, the wages tax collector line item budget 0, and the finance office assistant wages at $5,000.
Okay.
Seconded.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the ayes have it. So everything else is pretty straightforward. We're waiting for a couple of things from Elaine, the support in the cloud, but everything else is pretty self-explanatory. Delinquent tax collector, pretty self-explanatory. Any questions on that one, or should we just turn the page?
That looks good to me.
Okay. Okay, the listers. We have 18,000, which reflected what they had given us, plus the 2.25. Then their information, we asked a lot of questions. We were confused, like Lankaby's maps. The planning committee buys maps, the listers buy maps, so it seemed like a lot, but they gave us verification for that. So any questions on this page? Okay. Okay, the planning board. Connie, do you want to speak to this, or I can? It doesn't matter.
I think the only development since our last select board meeting is some of the select board members still weren't clear about the plan for financing the town plan and the floodplain ordinance. So we sent an email to the planning commission to try to get some clarification, and I think Andy may be here to speak on that.
And we also wondered the $10,000, what was going to be spent of that and towards what was being budgeted in the $8,000.
Well, I think that the way that it was presented to the planning board is what's the total cost and what's the plan to have the finances for it, because the balance will go away at the end of fiscal year 25.
Right, but if you need $10 next year and you pay $8 of that this year, then you really only needed $2 next year. So that's why we had questions about that $10,000 and what was that going to be spent on, and was that part of the 8,000 sort of. So, and did you get clarification?
I don't know if Andy's here to speak on that.
I assume he
There's no
is.
response
So-
from the email has not been replied to.
Do you want to speak on this?
I need to hear what the question is. At the moment, I'm confused as to what the question is. So could you state the question and I'll speak to it.
When we saw the budget for next year, we questioned how much of the $10,000 was going to be used for any parts of next year, like paying ahead of time for parts of the plan, or, well, you say no, but we didn't know
I haven't
that.
said anything yet. I'm listening.
Well, you shook your head no.
Move my
and-
chair.
We have to do our due diligence and look and say, well, we're gonna earmark 8,000, but what's this 10,000? We've only spent 1,000 of that so far in the first 4 months.
We spent 4,000.
Well, when we were doing this budget that I have in front of me.
According to the NEMRIC, the planning board has spent a little over 2,000 on the town plan.
2,400 has actually been spent.
Right.
I checked, I mentioned at the last select board meeting, I checked with Wyndham Regional, because what we have internally here does not reflect their November billing. Now, Elaine may have gotten that in the interim,
Right.
but I called them up and said, okay, sometime first week in December, and said, what do you have for billing that we're going to see? And they said roughly $4,000. So
I
that
don't
would,
think she's received that.
she may have, that was,
Yeah,
Is that 4,000 on top of the 2,400
no,
or
total.
total?
for fiscal year 25 so far.
And we have then 7 months left in the fiscal year. Correct?
Yeah,
Okay. And so we're spending roughly the rate of somewhere $1,200 to $1,500 a month at the moment on that. And so I would expect that we'll spend a good portion of that $10,000 paying for the contract with Wyndham Regional in our current fiscal year.
Of that 15,000
Correct.
contract,
and then the balance would be from the 800. Talk about how
or
they,
from the reserve, which is what I thought was the original conversation with the previous select board.
There was discussion about, where do you use the reserve? And I heard from Sherwood last meeting, and heard some today about the need to have contingencies and reserves. So I think it would be unfortunate to totally spend the reserve down to zero. I think that would leave no flexibility. So the $4,500 was to pay for the portion that we expected in July through September. I put the $3,500 there for the floodplain ordinance in that same line item because I didn't have another line item that reflected it. So, and that's why I called it out as being two separate items. And just to clarify, we do have a floodplain ordinance that covers and requires building permits for things that are built in flood zones. And that is part of what's required to be a member or participating with FEMA, to be able to get FEMA funds, and for any resident that wants to get flood insurance to be able to be eligible to receive or to buy flood insurance. That's all part of the same program. In our area, FEMA is redoing all of their flood insurance rate maps, which means that they're going through and remapping where they think flood zones are, kind of updating it back through Irene, where we discovered that a lot of the floods in New England in general, but Vermont specifically, do not necessarily occur along the major rivers. A lot of times it's the tributaries that are narrow valleys and can't handle the water. So when they're redoing these maps, we're finding that a lot of the places that they're now calling flood zones are not, just along the river. They're along some tributaries and there are other areas that are being added. That has to be all incorporated in. And the state also has been pushing River Corridor, which is a broader flood restriction zone for construction, to basically prevent people from building in areas where they then are in danger of flood, loss of property. That has to be updated, and I forget the last time it was updated, but we have to update it to continue to maintain our compliance. And we don't issue a lot of permits. I don't think in my time we've ever issued a floodplain building permit, but the procedure has to be there to do that.
And this is work that you hire out totally?
I was estimating that it would take 35 to 40 hours, and we would hire it out probably from Wyndham Regional.
Okay. What I would.
I haven't gotten a quote.
Yeah,
So I don't
So
know.
can I just ask a question? So what I'm hearing Andy say is that he thinks by the end of fiscal year 25, the planning board should spend the $10,000 with Wyndham Regional at the rate that they're being billed. Most likely that $10,000 will be used. That will leave a balance of $5,000 and $5,030 for the rest of the contract. So I don't,
And what else did you need in the 8,000?
There was the 3,500 in there for redoing the floodplain ordinance.
Okay.
And that's not a quote, that's, I did talk to them about it and said kind of like, what do you think we're thinking? It's a much simpler,
And you're
document.
proposing not using the reserve at all, just keeping it as a true,
I would think that would be wise.
What is the
maybe
amount
round
of
it down,
reserve?
but
$6,619. What would you use the reserve for if you don't use it? I'm not saying spend it all down, but what would you use the reserve for?
we live in an environment where the legislature, as you know, keeps doing things and changing regulations, and then you have to respond. And I don't know, I know that in the past, if you look at our budgets, they go up and down like this. They're kind of crazy. Some years we spend next to nothing. Other years it's big dollars. And the idea of having a reserve is that there's some amount of ability to handle some of the smaller things that come along, and not have, come back and basically ask for additional funds after we've already gone through it, which then creates a deficit. So it's trying to avoid future deficit spending. I don't know that there's a perfect number there, but I think there should be some reserve.
So that 8,000 would cover the 5,000, let's say,
and
of the
3,500, yeah.
8,000.
You can create a new line item for,
Yeah,
floodplain ordinance.
8,000 doesn't cover it all.
Right.
It gets a little closer. Gets close.
Now you have explained what we were looking for.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I'm hard of hearing sometimes, so I don't necessarily
'Cause
hear in this sort of setting.
yeah,
so
I
have to listen
mean,
to
that's what, we looked at it and said, okay, 10,000 is part of this 8,000 gonna be paid in this year with this 10,000, and maybe the 8,000 is too much, we need to ask questions.
Okay.
And we have, and now we're, at least I'm satisfied. I don't even know that we need a motion for this one, we'll just change 8,000 to the second line item.
Or just get the opinions of.
Yeah, I'm changing it and then I'm gonna get an opinion, my friend. And it's under the town plan totally, do you want it broken up at all?
I'm sorry.
Do you want it broken up at all, or 8,000 under the town plan is fine?
If that works for everybody, I'm happy to, using town plan as a broad term.
Okay. So select board, your thoughts?
I was actually recently reading about staying in compliance with the floodplain ordinances, under the Better Connections program and things like that, where they help you with town planning, so I do understand budgeting for this 8,000 and not draining the reserve. I think that's a smart way to do it, because staying, the compliance is an issue and you have to stay in compliance to benefit from some of the funding, so I agree.
Nick?
Andy has satisfied all of my questions. I just kind of want a little clarity on things as we discussed last meeting, but absolutely, we need to stay in compliance with all of these plans, stay up to date, so we're always eligible for grants and other things and can respond when we need it. So yes, I'm happy to move forward.
Okay. Okay, so we'll move on to town government, BCA. We've got $75 total, we can afford that. Town
Do you
government,
want to address any other parts of your, do you want to address any other parts of your budget request? Because there is one other area that you requested that you did.
When I talked about the technical one, where I think I'd asked for 600, which was primarily 160 of that was to cover, I saw in the warrants today, which is our Zoom. And then there was another, like, rounded out, my math is terrible, 400 and something that was any technical or engineering work that we needed to do. And to your point about maps are included in the town plan portion.
okay. And my question is, why do we need 2 Zoom accounts? We already pay for one for select board, that could be,
As Sherwood pointed out, I went to, when we, COVID and had to start Zooming Zoom. I actually talked to Connie at that point about how we would work it with one account and how we'd schedule meetings. And there was reluctance basically at that time to try to do it as one account. And so we went ahead and set up our own separate account.
I'm not sure there's still reluctance, and that reluctance might have been a learning curve on our part, not really understanding the Zoom, and now that we do. So it's just something that for 26, maybe we should think about just all having one Zoom account.
Our current one, we run October to October, which so, I don't know whether you can cancel them in the middle of.
No, but I mean, that's one of the questions we had. So, and it just got paid, by the way, I think I just.
Yeah, it was in the warrants today.
Yeah. So,
And just remind me what the technical engineering, the 400, is that?
It's unknown, that's
Oh,
like,
okay.
we occasionally.
well, then
Yeah.
that's something that could come out of your reserve, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, municipal town hall, we've got 4 Elaine pieces that we're waiting for. We've got, the janitorial wages, we've got, let me see, town hall maintenance. Did we run the items on what did we spend? Like, we budgeted $5,000 for 24, we spent 487. Then for some reason, last year, they budgeted 7,500. And so far in 4 months, we spent $43, and now we're budgeting 10,000. So we really haven't been utilizing it, but the line item request keeps going up. So I'm not quite sure about that, and if we wanted to discuss that.
I remember at a committee meeting, the way we landed on the $10,000 was because we weren't sure which line item the different repairs and maintenance were going into. I think they were going into a couple different places when it was happening. And we wanted to put all of that into this one and have the opportunity, like if we don't get the grant for the roof, but pay for the roof repair, the windows we know are coming up upstairs that we need to deal with, and we wanted to put enough money in there that if we did want to catch up on some of the repairs for the town hall, that it was there all in one place, all paid out of that line. You remember that conversation? Yeah. So I think that's why we budgeted the 10,000. I think there was some question on our part, like where that was happening. Like down here, there was renovations and stuff like that, and we just wanted to put it all in one spot. And that's how we landed on $10,000.
Okay. I think it's high, but we'll see. Nick, what do you think?
Sorry, can you just repeat the line item?
The line item is repair/maintenance TH. It's like the fifth one down. And what I said, we budgeted 5,000, spent under 500, budgeted 7,500 in 4 months, spent $43. Now we're budgeting 10,000. Katie rightfully said that we want everything to be in one bucket, but we do have, and I agree with that, but we do have the $50,000 that was voted at town meeting for town hall, so the roof could come out of that as well. And that's already, the taxpayers have already paid for that. So I'm always trying to like whittle down what so.
I agree with that approach.
What if we made it 7,500? Would everybody be comfortable with that? Considering that we have the reserve for town hall.
Yeah, and that's not a change from last budget, so it won't really affect our percent change.
And hopefully we're gonna get the grants and we're gonna do that. We should be hearing about that this week.
Should I called them or I emailed them and they said they were meeting this week to make the decisions. And
Good.
so
So,
word might come out tomorrow. I'm really hoping.
good.
I spoke to her on Monday.
Okay, do we need to have a motion because we changed it or just change it?
Seems okay to change it.
Okay.
It
That's how I
has
feel.
to be-
And then at the bottom, we added one for the repair and maintenance wages to pull them out of the janitorial. How much does it cost to clean the place? We want to have Brian come through and paint the bottoms at least to start with. We want him to put up that board in the hall, and Alenka will rearrange the pictures. But it will be nice to delineate what's cleaning and what's maintenance. He repaired the light out front, which goes on automatically, the hanging chandelier, and it's so beautiful.
Yeah, it looks really nice.
I'm so happy with that. Constables, we did research with VLCT why we're charged for police, and I guess the quickest answer is a constable is sort of a cop. So that's why we have to pay $500 a year for them to be insured. The fire department gave these items, so these are their figures, right?
The next page is there for you.
Okay, page. So the fire department, VLCT, repair, they wanted 5,000, we had put 2,000. Elaine, they wanted 2,400, we put 2,300. And Connie and my figures are all pencil. And the one that I personally feel passionate about is a new firehouse contingency fund. Those two things are, in my opinion, counter, because one is you're saving for a new firehouse, and one is an what if you have a bill that you didn't expect contingency fund. So they don't really go together in the same line item, in my opinion. I had suggested an article to start saving for said new firehouse in a very transparent way. So, and
Did they answer the question? Zoom was hard for me to hear everything last time. Did they answer the question on where you guys had put in 2,000, but they had put in 5,000 under repair, maintenance, firehouse? What was the answer to that? Like,
which one is it again?
I
It's the second
believe
one
that,
repair, maintenance,
I don't
firehouse.
have it, I can get the minutes out from the meeting, but don't they have something planned? I think that they had something planned, if I remember correctly.
And also I was trying to get some board input on what I had already opened up. And so can we come back to yours after we talk about the new firehouse contingency?
Sure.
I had suggested it be an article like the other one that they did for the pumper, but to put X amount of dollars aside to save for a new firehouse. And it could be used for planning, for, architects, for land purchase, for whatever they delineate. But instead of putting it in here as a contingency fund and then asking to roll it over at the end of every year, wasn't as transparent as I would like it. So, and
So you're asking the other select board,
what their feelings are on my comment about the new firehouse contingency and making it an article, or suggesting to the fire department that they make it an article. So board, what do you,
We haven't asked them that yet?
yes, we did.
we mentioned it, but they.
We did ask them last meeting.
Okay.
The answer
The impression I got is that they were reticent to do that because they were anxious that articles are going to get shot down at town meeting. And so then they would not have any contingency fund. Whereas if it's in a line item and we're just approving the budget, then there's still something that if it doesn't get used, it can be rolled in.
But then we went ahead and did an article for a pumper truck, and it's been my experience at town meeting that people are pretty darn generous with articles. Like the 50,000 for town hall, there really was little discussion and it was boom, done. So I think that I don't like the way the line item is worded, and I would rather have it be an article, but I don't know what you two feel.
I feel similarly. I think maybe to kind of get at that concern about how the townspeople are going to react is perhaps this is something else that gets discussed in pre-town meeting. Perhaps they have like a presentation or something ready to just open the article. And I think
agree.
that's how the planning commission approached the 50,000. And I think that was part of the reason why that was successful, even though maybe there was some question of, is it going to be successful? And so I just think the residents, in my opinion, appreciate the transparency and just appreciate knowing what the plans are. And when they have that, they might be more likely to approve things.
I agree 100%. What about you, Kate?
I wish I had better understood their response to that.
Basically, their response was people always vote down articles.
Okay. Well,
One of us could work with them and could help them to develop something to give to pre-town meeting and town meeting for said article. And I am very supportive of the fire department. I think they do a little job for a little building with very few people. And could they use a new fire department? Sure. But we're not getting there fast the way we're going, and I think we need to be a little more transparent and have the townspeople realize how important it is.
And I agree. I think they do have limited resources, but I would say they do a large and very important job for our community. And I think we need to give them our support and also do things in a transparent way.
Yeah. And it's not only fires. I mean, when something floods, they're at your door saying evacuate and where are you going to go, and they're keeping records, and you know, they work very hard and they're very appreciated, and I think they get further this way, and as we said, it would be more transparent. So are we waiting on you?
No, I guess it's okay to.
Do you think we need a motion for that, or just we're gonna suggest an article and we're gonna offer to work with them and?
So if I understand where the select board's at, Nick and Ally have very clearly stated that they are in support of suggesting an article and offering assistance. And Katie has said that she thinks she's okay with that. She doesn't feel quite as strongly, but she's not rejecting it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just want to make sure.
You know, in school we go this, or this. So,
I could add, a vote clarifies that.
That's true.
so,
I guess that if there's time that this isn't final today. So the discussion is gonna continue. And I think that opening up that discussion about, talking to them about putting it in an article as opposed to keeping it here, I'm interested in that, so.
do you think we should have a vote on this, or because it's not a decision, we don't need one?
I don't think we need to vote. I think
Okay.
it's gonna. But I did wonder, why were we budgeting less than what they thought they were gonna need for the repair and maintenance of the firehouse?
Again, I have to go look at the notes, but my understanding was we didn't know why they were proposing that dollar amount.
Well-
And I believe Sherwood said that there was some projects scheduled or something.
Right, we budgeted less because we had 1,500 budgeted, they spent 500. We had 6,500 budgeted, they spent under 2,000. So we were like, well, they're always budgeting a lot more than they're spending, so let's knock it down. Then Sherwood came and gave us reasons for that, so I'm fine with changing that back to 5,000.
Yeah, I'd like to change that back to 5,000.
Nick, you okay with that too?
Absolutely.
Okay, anything else?
Were they feeling like their mutual aid dues was gonna go up, it looks like?
They think it might, I don't care about the $1,000.
Yeah.
We were just doing our due diligence with the numbers we had.
Yeah,
So we'll make that 24K.
yeah, I think we should.
I think we already had, yeah.
Yeah, I think we did change that after the meeting. Okay, and so then we're on to vehicles. We have 6,000, Elaine, 500 and 600. They had asked for 14,000. And the bottom one, 1,500, and I don't Nick, do you remember what they said? I'm not asking you, Katie, because you couldn't hear that well. But Nick, did you remember what they said particularly about those figures?
I believe it had to do because the new truck was arriving in this fiscal year or just
Yeah, we got
before.
stuff from
And
the
so there were
truck.
going to be some things that were going to need to be paid on now that the truck was going to be in hand. That is my recollection.
I sort of
That's
think it was
correct.
like communication pieces on the new truck, like the bells and whistles, so to speak. But
Yeah, I don't remember the specifics right now, but that's how I recall
okay, and then so what does the board feel?
So and then we're talking about the first one, right?
The 14,000.
I think we should leave it at 14,000.
Just to be clear, was the 14,000 for, it wasn't for the stuff that had to be added to the new truck, that was the equipment line item, right? Or did
Oh,
it,
that's the 1,500.
because the first one is repair and maintenance.
Yeah, I guess I don't remember what it is now.
I know he said it on one of them, maybe Nick remembers.
Well, I remember what Nick said, but now that you're saying both of them, maybe it really was the 600 turned into 1,500.
Just gonna see if I can.
Oh, was that the one, Nick, where he was saying it's 1962 and we bought it for this and it's probably gonna need work and
Actually, yeah.
and one
Right,
time the town had to pay for it, but they didn't have money, so we needed to go into our dues money, and that's what I recall now. It took a minute.
Yep. Yeah, it was very aged equipment.
Yeah.
So, I'm tired. I've been doing this since 4:30 this morning.
So just to be clear, I am okay with the 14,000.
I am as well. They're large and detailed pieces of equipment, and they are very old. And we have to expect large, inconvenient repairs.
But having said that, they don't get used all that much, so it's not like the highway equipment that are out all the time and in the worst storms and things like that. So it's kind of a double-edged thought.
And I think that's maybe why some of the equipment is even 10 years older than our oldest highway equipment.
Yeah,
Possibly.
agreed.
So are we gonna keep the 1,500 and the 14,000?
I think we should.
Nick?
Agreed.
Okay. Turn the page. Public Works Municipal, we have nothing here. And let's see, Connie and I put Public Works. Were we waiting for all of these for
This is a
Lane?
new, yeah, this has all been moved around.
Uh-huh. And then Town Barn Garage, Comcast, the internet is 1,600. 1,000 for repairs for the garage, a lane there and a lane at the bottom.
A
Then,
bunch of this stuff has been moved to highway, so again, this one's gonna change when they,
we have been streamlining the way the budget looks and getting rid of the 200, the 300 fund rather, and putting it into the 200 fund. And then getting some of the things out of the town budget that belong in the highway budget. So these numbers are gonna move around a little bit, but the numbers will remain the same. So, what kind of boiler do you have up there, Jeremy?
Propane.
So this is like equipment propane boiler? Okay,
16, right? We're on page 16.
correct.
I think, okay. I think we're on to 17.
Yeah, equipment boiler.
No, I'm right here.
But again, this stuff is being moved around, so it's, I think this, some of the stuff's going over to highway, some of it's staying.
I know, but if we get a dollar amount here, that's fine, right?
I thought we had everything in there except for what we're waiting for from Elaine.
I'll just say, if we're talking about the boiler, it is on Public Works on page 16.
Yep. Connie, what we're doing is just talking about the figures.
Okay.
Are they correct? Are they happy with what we've written?
Gotcha.
Okay, Public Works, waste recycling compactor. The attendant, we have budgeted $14,500. The janitorial services, which, I mean, Joey used to come here and clean the town hall, and it got kind of confusing with the 561, but for the first 4 months of the year, there was less than $100, so we budgeted 500. The recycling was 20,000. The maintenance of the compactor was 10,000. Elaine's gonna give us that figure. The dues for Wyndham County Solid Waste Management District are just under 10. The supplies for the compactor are 5,000. I'm not quite sure why we have repair in one section and supplies in another, but it's, because basically it's 15,000 for the compactor. And then the garbage tipping fees are 35,000, and Green Up Day, we haven't paid anything forever, so we just zeroed it out. Any questions?
No questions.
Nick? Nick, are you set with
Sorry.
that? Good?
Yeah, sorry, it took a second to get that unmute. Yeah,
That's
no
okay.
questions.
This is the kind of boring page. The other expenses, and a lot of these were lane fill-in that we don't really have a lot of wiggle room in. I mean, we could get rid of a $100 Memorial Day expense, but other things are, like the Wyndham County tax, for instance, goes to the courthouse and to the sheriff and to different parts of those entities. We're working on the Stone Arch Bridge money because this $150,000, in my opinion, was knocking our averages off for the year. And I think it was book kept in the wrong place at one point, so we're trying to investigate that. And I don't know how long you folks want to work tonight. I'll keep going until you tell me to stop. The library, we had a real back and forth with the library because they wanted more than the 2.25 for the library, and I kind of held my ground and said that's what everybody else is getting, you know, and they said that they're their own boss and they can do what they want, and I said no, I don't believe so. Nick and I are going to investigate certain things going forward with some data I found from the state and try to figure out exactly what type of library we have. You know, whether it's a municipal library or a private library, or what is it really, and go from there. But right now they've backed up and said, okay, the 2.25 is okay for this year. It's still a high wage, but we were kind of stuck with it from the town meeting vote last year. And then the librarian assistants are $10,000 a year. And then we have almost $2,000 for a custodian. And then Vermont League Cities and Towns, FICA Fed, those we can't do anything. The librarian gets retirement, so that's an expense to our town as well. Then these figures here that total $10,000 are also taxpayer expenses. One thing I talked to them about that's not reflected here, other than showing the third section on this sheet, is these are trustee expenses that the treasurer pays and the library pays them back every quarter. And I was sort of thinking, I don't know, how is it decided what goes on the trustees and what goes on up here, and could part of this up here come down, because $76,000 is a lot for a little part-time library in town, when both schools have libraries. And a lot of books are online today. So just food for thought, but this is what we have this year. Any comments?
No, just briefly. I think, we've had this back and forth with the library. We're on the same page now, so I'm okay with the budget as it is proposed. I will say, while books are many times online, the libraries do also serve a very vital role in the community for gathering and lots of other activities that don't just have to do with books, including access to museums and to, I believe they had free passes advertising right now in the Front Porch Forum, in the Lincoln Museum, the Hildene, don't exactly remember the word right now,
Mm-hmm.
in Manchester. And so, right, like there's a lot of opportunities beyond just having a paper or hard copy book. And even then, that is also a really great resource to have.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I'm happy for the library. I think it's a very good community center. And we have little enough community with our downtown having disappeared. So, Katie, do you want to take over and talk highways since you've been more involved than I?
Okay. I guess I'll start with Connie's notes here. So our goal with the highway budget was to keep it contained to an 8% increase or less. And
Which this budget does reflect.
which this budget does reflect. We wanted to create the special articles that we were creating because we have like larger planned and unplanned highway expenses, and there was a lot of back and forth on, do you budget for the unplanned or not? And Nemrick was really feeling like you put it in a reserve and you attach a number to it, and that was really important. And we've seen that now in some of our other places where we were talking about building reserve funds and how to build them as something that gets built upon, not just created and drained perpetually. So we wanted to have a highway reserve fund that we thought sort of that we created last year, but we didn't actually create that. We set aside money through special article, but we didn't actually formally create that fund. So we wanted to do that this year officially. You saw the language on the first page where we talked about the $500,000, $300,000 will be allocated for purchasing, leasing, and repair of major equipment, and $200,000 for town infrastructure. So that's one of the special articles. Another, we wanted to add some special projects line items, ditch stone, headers and culverts, purchase gravel, things like that. We already talked about where we're gonna try to put those 2 lease agreements for the grader and the backhoe and how to go about that. So that's all of our notes over here. And then otherwise, we just did what we've been doing with the other budget. We went through everything. There's some bigger things, there's some stuff we're getting grants for that are projects that we really wanted to plan for, budget for. I think Connie, Jeremy, and I have really put our heads together on what kind of funds that we've already qualified for, and then how to budget for them appropriately in the correct fiscal year, and where we might see that come back to us, which is pretty exciting because I think it's helped our budget a lot to have those things. They weren't accounted for before, and that really helped us contain this budget. And then no matter what, I feel like the highway budget especially is really eye-opening because materials costs are way up, and we just have to account for that, and those kinds of things are just going to keep going up and up and up. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about anything. We really did try to put a lot of thought into how much overtime they're doing and how to prepare for that, and what we would expect, which is one of those numbers that fluctuates greatly dependent on the weather, and actually dependent on whether you have 4 guys or 2. But I think we took a large average and figured that out, and we were all comfortable with what we came up with from that. So I don't know.
The insurance reimbursement of $13,000, is that something that you expect but haven't received yet in revenues on, well, these pages aren't numbered, this is 1 of 7 highway? Here it is, wait,
Yeah, I see it on
Okay.
here. I don't remember our conversation about that one.
That may have been about a particular, accident, I don't know, but
but
We
if it was
didn't feel-
budgeted for last year, it was voted on in March, and it's been, the year's been working since July, and I haven't really heard about waiting for an insurance payment, and we've only gotten $14, so I would almost think we need to research that, wouldn't you?
can ask Elaine.
Yeah.
Jeremy, is there anything in particular you wanna say about the budget?
No, I think it's good. Like you said, we spent a lot of time trying to not go too crazy this year, just as we went up last year. The unfortunate truth is prices of stuff just keep going up, and we in the past it's never been accounted for, and we're trying to do a more realistic budget than previous years. So.
Yeah, that's true. I think that the way the highway has been budgeted in the past, we've decided to change that and kind of come into a more transparent budget, would you say?
Yeah.
And so and also keep that percentage contained to 8% or less of an increase. And I think that we were able to accomplish both of those goals about just getting really realistic with what we are spending instead of deficit spending and making up for it in other places. I think that we're on the right track. And there was a lot of things that we had to do to kind of catch up, and now we're kind of getting there.
We're not quite there, but we are getting there.
Maybe it's a 3-year process.
And you're getting a lot of grants,
Yeah, we are.
so.
Yeah, we are pretty adamant about going after as many grants as we can. I mean, honestly, some of them are a pain in the butt, but it's worth it in the long run.
It's been a learning curve, but I think that it helps us stay on top of the standards that they're bringing down and all of that, and there's a lot of incentives, so we've been aggressively going after that, and then I think we're reaping the benefits of that.
Okay, you're doing it, not me.
Oh,
Did you
I think
just,
that's it, right?
yeah, I mean,
you
nobody.
just passed over the whole thing?
Well,
You're not gonna go?
I mean, we can if.
I don't care, I'm asking.
I mean, I'm trying to kind of look at anything,
I mean, the only thing we pretty much kept each line fairly close to what it was. I accounted for a very minimal increase in most lines. The only thing that's really kicking our budget up is the 2 reserve funds that we're asking for. And, of course, if they decide to do the lease payments as a line item, that'll kick our budget up too. But as far as, the biggest thing is just the bridge that we need to set aside some money for. The bridge is coming up, and the equipment. Those are the 2 big ticket items this year.
And I think when we get ready for town meeting and talk about the said articles, we should have at our fingertips the amount of grants that we received that gave us cash. And help defray a lot of the costs, and that we're gonna keep pounding on that and getting better at it all the time, so.
There was also a suggestion that I think is, I think that we're beginning to discuss more about what is the 2 to 3 year plan for the bridges, for paving, for road and ditching. I think that it would be helpful if we put together a 3-year plan that we bring to town meeting as well, because I know on the highway committee, we discuss it in that fashion.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be good for the residents to know.
I think we've also heavily discussed, since equipment is a hot topic and has been an issue for us this year, that we really have some sort of visual aids for the taxpayers so they can understand how, you know, the status of our equipment and what our plan is for, or, you know, our time frame for a lot of these trucks. It's dwindling, and, you know, I think that's gonna help. So we're not just seeing like last year's humongous jump in budget and things like that. We wouldn't, you know, if we present them with our plan and with the reality of where our equipment is at, then they can understand a little bit better in future budgets why, you know, we're allocating more funds to this or that, so that we can be ready to buy a truck or a bigger piece of equipment, and creating these reserves for those as well. And then we had this thing with the gravel crushing that we had to put a lot of discussion into. And I think that we landed at that $60,000 after much discussion and just having to be realistic about where we're at with our gravel crushing. So pretty much everything else is like what supplies cost and what our projects are that we have to do, that we plan to do.
Culverts and ditching are the biggest ones, you know, to try to prevent some of this future flooding. There's a lot of culverts in town that are just old and decaying and not the right size. First of all, they're not up to state standards for one, and second of all, they should be bigger than what they are, handle some of this volume that we've had in some of these storms.
I'm wondering if Nick has anything to add, since Nick
You
was on our
can, since
budget
I'm
committee.
looking for something. It's already over there.
I don't have much to add. I just, want to echo, I think, as you guys have already mentioned, there's been a lot of work to be really realistic and still contain our costs. And I think that we have seen in kind of the cost comparisons that we're actually still quite in line with some of the actuals, despite the lower budgets that were in years past. And so, really great job to Katie, Jeremy, Connie on getting it together and really getting the facts out where there were some questions and a lot of things. And I will say too, just on the grants, the local economic recovery or economic impact recovery, I don't remember what it was called. Putting that money towards the iPads and really improving the capacity for the highway department to do more of the work on the grants on their own, as we actually just had, I believe, last meeting, a contract with Wyndham Regional to work on grants that we're now paying less to Wyndham Regional because we can do more with that technology. So, I just think it's all on the right track and it is stabilizing. And I think someone said to me that this might be a 3-year process, and we're kind of coming to the end of that. So.
Okay, so thank you for presenting that. We've still got more select board stuff to do, and what I remembered what I was supposed to say during the chair report was that Corey has been working on a web page, like getting this big professional company to do it, and I have some data that we'll copy and put in your boxes for you to look at, and if we choose, we can put it on this budget. Then we go further on to new business, processing road issues / calls. I spoke to Jeremy before the meeting and presented a complaint that came in. And I must say, we get complaints all the time about the roads because people forget that it's winter, I think. And we had a complaint on Wiswell Hill. Jeremy listened to what the lady had to say and went and plowed it. And the lady called back the next day and was like, "This is great, thank you so much for listening." So I just want to preface this conversation that we get complaints sometimes, but we rectify them and we're kind to the taxpayers, and they end up happy most of the time. What do we do when people complain? Alanka usually writes a note to Connie and myself. We let Jeremy know if he pops in, and then if it's egregious, we present it at the board. But it's almost like, how could we make it, I was thinking myself, having a notebook where we write the complaint came in, leave a couple of lines, and then I could call and I could write down the lady called back, she's very happy. You know, that's what most of the things happen. Somebody calls and goes, yikes, what about this? And we go, okay, and we do it. Or we say, we'll be there in an hour, and we're done. But how can we make it so we keep track of our successes and not just the big loud noises, sort of? I haven't figured it out other than a little notebook that Alanka could write in, but that's not very high tech.
Is she getting most of the phone calls? Is it
Yeah,
usually town hall?
they usually call the town clerk. They'll call her at night. They'll call me at night. And you know, unless it's an emergency, I'm not going to call Jeremy at night.
Yeah.
But you know, sometimes people just want to, you know, stop watching TV and complain a little bit. And yes, I said that for the camera, but you know, it's the truth. And we do what we can, and Jeremy and his guys work very, very hard, and we appreciate that. So any way we can think about a way to keep track of calls, I won't call them complaints, resolves, and problems that should go to the select board maybe, because in winter we can't have special select board meetings for every road complaint, because we get a lot of them, unfortunately. This one complaint, Alanka called her friend that lives on the same road and said, I just got this horrific, you know, report about this road, and she said, I just came down and it was fine. So, and you know, you just lose that continuity over the year, and then everything seems like a big deal all the time, and it's not. I mean, so I just didn't know what you folks want to do going forward. I had said put Jeremy's phone number in the town report, and he said a hard no. I said a way to alert the road foreman, like is his iPad connected so that we could send him a text while he's out in the middle of a snowstorm saying, you know, there's such and such on such and such a road, and he might type back, I'll get there in 45 minutes or something.
I don't think it is, right?
No, I get my emails through on my cell phone. I can get emails.
So
Yeah.
we should put out the email address too.
The email
The other thing
address
is our phone at the garage is so outdated that I can't, like most voicemails you can access from an outside line, and I can't access the voicemail at the garage from.
you're through the First Light program or
He
something?
can't access it through his.
I
when he's
know,
out
but
on
I'm
work.
saying
Yeah.
whose equipment is it, Connie? It's First Light. So
I'm not sure it's.
I think
First
it-
Light.
that
Or
seems
it's
like
not.
something we could do.
Comcast is the internet, but First Light
Oh.
is the phone. And
It's just like a regular cordless base recorder. It's not like
So you have to be in the office.
so it's not like what we have here?
right where you can go into a cloud system, really, basically, and access it from.
Do you know what you'd want in its place?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not up to date with that.
But
kind of
right
stuff.
now, the internet would be,
I mean, the email would be the best way to do it.
okay.
If you know, if I'm
And
not,
I mean, I'm
if
happy
I'm
to
not
talk.
directly in the office or around the office, then
But it comes to your phone,
well, my email does, yes.
yeah.
It seems like
But-
we could deal with that phone issue. He should be able to access the voicemail to the town garage.
We don't even have caller ID.
We should be able to fix that. and
Does
figure
the
that out.
phone look like the one right behind you?
Absolutely not.
Okay, because we
It's
pay
a
the bill,
cordless base too. There's
like a
actually, we have three of them.
Walmart cordless phone.
We have one hard line when the power goes out, and
Alright,
3 cordless units. The main one.
we
has
just
it.
paid $133 to First Light for your phone service, so, Connie, do you wanna call them or remind me to call them, and we'll see about getting a phone and what capabilities he would require?
I mean, even if it was one where I could just call the the phone number and then press the number and access the voicemail.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
But the other issue
I
is
really like that benefit,
we've all been around this town. I don't get service everywhere either, so you know, it's like
But we can only do what we can do.
right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'll talk to Alenka about doing the old school logbook, because I really think, you know, in the complaint department, we might have 50 complaints in a winter, but 47 of them, people are like, thanks a lot. And I'd like to see that, because you always remember the horror stories and not the success stories. So I'll talk to her about that. And I don't think it would take that much more time than writing me a missive about it. You know, I could come in.
We're usually pretty good about forwarding that stuff like emails to me too.
Mhm.
I mean, the other thing is people, you know, the time frames. We have a schedule of what roads get done first. And we haven't changed that since I've started here 6 years ago. I mean, and then people tend to forget that stuff happens. We have breakdowns. You know, somebody gets stuck, that pulls the guy off his route to go help the other guy. So, and the biggest thing is we can't be everywhere at once.
No, I know.
We just don't have the manpower or the equipment. So if something's not done to their standards, I guess, then, you know, I don't want to tell them.
They
We'll
go
get
on,
to it.
they go on
We will get to
Facebook.
Yeah.
You know, so it's not like we're forgetting it, you know, just neglecting it and not doing it. It's just, you know, stuff happens. You can't get through certain roads in a fair amount of time, and that's how it is, you know.
And you have to sleep sometimes when it's round the clock.
Yeah.
I find you guys to be pretty consistent whenever possible,
What I do
you know.
is
With
you
my
make
house being
copies
right
of
up on the
the
road like that, I see
glue
you
it this
every time you go by pretty
and
much
if
when
not,
I'm home.
we'll get it to the
And it's always around the
agenda
same
for next
times
time.
with whenever
Yeah.
possible.
I mean, blacktop is priority because they're federally routes, and
Yeah.
then when we do the main dirt roads, drags, and then the side roads are when we get to them.
Yep.
It's as simple as that.
Makes sense to me.
Okay, let's move along so we can go home and go to sleep. V-Trans Better Roads Grant. What is this?
I can explain it. So this is a competitive grant that we are trying to apply for, and we need the select board chair to sign this paper that basically we're currently putting together all of this information. I think I printed out. We got
so if I can just,
yeah. Go
so
ahead.
this is one of the competitive grants that V-Trans has. Some of them are not competitive, you just have to wait your turn and you get the funds.
The better back roads.
Yeah, this one is actually competitive. We are going for the $40,000 category C in order to do, correct me if I'm wrong, ditching and culvert, stream bank on West Hill and Simpson Brook.
Stream bank erosion repair, basically. Alright.
Yeah.
So this is a new grant that is, the application is due on December 27th, so we are quickly trying to get that together. And it, one of the documents is to have the select board sign off on it.
And I think maybe the way that I considered possibly making the motion for this would be to say that after we've completed the application on Monday, we would authorize you to sign
That
off
sounds
on
good,
it.
because I'm thinking, am I
You
gonna
can't
sign the
sign,
blank one?
right, you can't sign this blank page, but I'd like to make,
Oh, sorry.
I'd like to make a motion to authorize Ally Evans to sign off on our Better Roads Grant Program application after we complete it, at the beginning of next week.
Seconded.
Now,
Okay,
discussion.
Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that this would be a fiscal year 27 budgetary item.
Yes.
This is because this deadline's next week. We won't find out until February.
I think so, yeah.
So it wouldn't be anything we would initiate until fiscal year 27.
But would we get the money this year?
No.
maybe?
No, it'll
No.
come in
July 1st.
the next fiscal year.
Okay.
No, it may come this year, but the work has to be completed by the end of fiscal year 27.
So we may get money, have to hold it over till the
Correct.
next one, and that
Correct.
should be financial office nightmare. So.
It's,
Thank you for doing
it's a
that.
reimbursement.
It's a reimbursement, so
So
I
we
think
don't
we
get
would-
anything until the project is.
What we planned on doing was in not fiscal year 26 budget, but when we create the budget for fiscal year 27, we'll already know whether or not we got the grant for the 2 projects that we're trying to get the grant
So we'll
for.
budget
And then we would
40,000 and
Budget for
whatever.
those specific projects,
Mhm.
and then, we have a match involved in it, and we would hopefully, complete those
Yeah.
projects and
I
get it.
think it's only 10% on these, isn't it?
It's 20.
20%.
20?
It's 20. So we've crunched all those numbers, and it doesn't come out of this budget, but
No.
it would be a project that we would be
The
preparing.
timeline doesn't work for us to be in this budget.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Are we finished with discussion?
Yeah, I think so.
Aye. Nick?
Aye.
Good. And the ayes have it. And then we'll move on to West River Snow Goers letter to approve. The West River Snow Goers Snowmobile Club requests permission to ride snowmobiles on the edge and or across the following town-maintained roads during the open season from December 16th to April 15th. And the only one, number 10 is the Holt Farm and the East Hill Road. Does that kind of bump up against what we were talking about?
I think it does.
So I might make the suggestion that when you talk to Jesse Bishop about the snowmobiles, that we, I don't know, can we approve it with the proviso that Jeremy is talking about number 10? The southern end of Harmony from Holt Farm.
I think it's on, they used to run the whole length of the road, but I'm not sure.
I know they go right up behind my house somewhere up
Right.
in there, and
Well,
then,
when there was a bridge that came across the river behind Harmonyville store, came into the pit road, and then they would go up the hill, and then go in the first driveway after the trailer,
and then probably down around my
and then
house.
go up, somewhere. I'm not really sure how the trail system works here, but as far as going past our dump site, mostly, I haven't seen snowmobile traffic up there in a couple of winters, so.
So what I have is that you are voting on approving their requests with the understanding that Jeremy is talking to them about number 10 East Hill Road.
Correct.
I think
Number 10.
right beside the road.
Should I make a motion?
Sure.
Make a motion? I'd like to make a motion to approve the West River Snow Goers Club request with the understanding that Jeremy is going to be speaking to them about item number 10 on their list.
Seconded.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, now we are on to Rescue Inc. contract. It's many pages. And basically it's our yearly contract. And it's what Kate Jancic described to us when she went to that meeting about X amount of dollars per the 2020 census. And it's all mapped out.
Let's see.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the contract with Rescue Inc. and authorize Aliatas as the chair to sign the packet of work.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so everybody is in favor. Okay, and this is still the contract. And then the last one is WB Mason. And WB Mason is the contract for the,
The service contract, servicing the machine.
well, isn't that a contract?
Oh, I know, I just,
Yeah. It's not the sales contract, it's a service
it's not
contract
the leasing contract.
for Elenka's machine.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the WB Mason service contract and authorize Ally Evans to sign on behalf of the board.
Seconded.
And discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So, anything else, folks? I know, I was just getting there. I was waiting to see if anybody had anything else. Okay, motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Jeremy wants to go home. Good night, everybody.